Marcus Williams sat at his kitchen table, the kind of table that had seen more stress than meals. This morning was shaping up to be no different. The light from the rising sun barely made it through the blinds, casting long shadows over a pile of paperwork that seemed more like a monument to frustration than anything useful. At 42 years old, Marcus was supposed to be one of those people who had it all together. You know the type. Those who walk into a room and make others stand a little straighter. Not out of respect, but because they have to. But life, oh, life doesn't care about your titles or your plans. It has this nasty habit of throwing bricks at your face when you think you have it all figured out. Marcus stared at the papers in front of him, each one mocking him with its fine print in bureaucratic language. It wasn't that he didn't understand them. He could probably recite a financial statement in his sleep. But today it felt different. It felt personal. Maybe it was the pressure of running a massive company. Maybe it was the thought that no matter how high he climbed, the world always found a way to remind him of his roots. Where did he come from? South Bronx, New York. The kind of place where dreams either get sharp teeth or are devoured. Marcus wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. In fact, he didn't even have a plastic spoon. His father worked double shifts at a factory until the day he was fired for speaking out about dangerous working conditions. "You've got to be 10 times better than them," his father used to say. "Not twice, 10 times, because they'll never let you forget who you are." Marcus took those words to heart. He fought his way out of the Bronx through scholarships, internships, and long, grueling nights. He built himself into a man that people couldn't ignore. Yet here he was, 20 years later, staring at a stack of papers that seemed to mock his every achievement. But Marcus wasn't the type to let life win. Not today. Today he had a plan that would put him back in control. Every now and then, Marcus liked to go undercover. No suits, no ties, just him, wearing a beat-up leather jacket and jeans that looked like they'd never seen the inside of a laundry machine. It was his way of staying grounded, seeing the world the way most people did, without the gloss and polish. Today he had decided to visit a branch of his own bank. Not for a meeting, not to give speeches, but to see how the bank really operated when no one knew who he was. Marcus walked into the bank, and the atmosphere hit him immediately. It was one of those places where everyone pretends you don't exist as soon as you step through the door. The decor was sleek, polished marble floors, shiny counters, but it felt cold, too cold. The customers were scattered around, some filling out forms, others waiting in line, but the staff hardly glanced up as he entered. Marcus made his way to the counter, keeping his head low. He wasn't here to make a scene. He wasn't here to shake things up. He was just here to observe. The man behind the counter, a mid-30s guy with an expression that screamed, "I peaked in high school," barely looked up when Marcus approached. His name tag read, "Ethan." "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his tone flat, almost like he was hoping Marcus would leave before he had to do anything. "Yeah," Marcus replied coolly. "I'd like to withdraw $5,000 from my account." Ethan raised an eyebrow and leaned back slightly in his chair, clearly surprised by the request. "Do you have ID?" he asked, a bit more dismissive than necessary. Marcus handed over his driver's license and bank card. Ethan took them slowly, as if inspecting them for any reason other than verifying them. "What's the account number?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. Marcus gave him the number, and Ethan typed it into the system. His fingers moved slowly, like he was trying to drag this out. After what felt like an eternity, Ethan finally looked up and frowned. "Sorry, we can't do that," he said, sliding Marcus's cards back across the counter. "Excuse me?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but tinged with confusion. Ethan shrugged as if the situation didn't matter. "We don't have that much cash on hand. You'd have to put in a request, and even then, we'd have to verify everything," he said dismissively. Marcus stared at him, his patience wearing thin. "What exactly do you mean by verify everything?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. Ethan smirked, clearly enjoying the power he thought he had. "Well, we have to make sure the funds are legitimate," he said, his tone now dripping with condescension. That one word, legitimate, stung more than any insult Marcus had ever heard. It wasn't just the insult. It was the implication that he was somehow unworthy of the money he'd worked so hard to earn. He forced himself to take a deep breath and stay calm. He wasn't going to let this guy see how much that word had gotten under his skin. Not yet. All right, Marcus said, leaning slightly toward the counter. Let's try this again. Check my account and do it properly this time. Ethan sighed dramatically, like Marcus was asking him to perform some kind of impossible task. Fine, he said, clearly irritated. He typed the account number into the system again, his fingers moving with a noticeable slowness. Marcus stood there, his patience wearing thinner with each passing second. He watched Ethan's hands move, and the longer this dragged on, the more he could feel the tension building. This wasn't just about the withdrawal anymore. It was about something deeper. Finally, Ethan looked up from the computer, his face blank. Sir, there seems to be a note on your account, he said, his voice faltering slightly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What note? He asked, his voice cool but sharp. Ethan hesitated for a moment before reading off the screen. It says, refer any large withdrawals to upper management. Marcus smirked, crossing his arms. Interesting, he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. And yet, you thought it was a good idea to deny me service without even following that protocol? Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He stood there, awkwardly shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Before he could respond, the door to the bank opened, and in walked a man in a well-tailored suit. The man's name tag read David Carter, and when his eyes landed on Marcus, his entire demeanor shifted. Mr. Carter, David said, hurrying over to Marcus with a forced smile. I didn't realize you were visiting today. Ethan froze, his face turning pale, as he glanced between Marcus and David. What's going on here? David asked, his voice still strained, but now with an undertone of concern. Marcus looked at David coolly, his eyes narrowing slightly. It seems that Ethan here didn't follow the proper procedure when I requested my withdrawal. David's face paled even more as he turned toward Ethan. Is that true? He asked, his voice stern now. Ethan stammered, clearly unsure how to respond. I just followed procedure, he muttered. Marcus folded his arms and stepped back, watching the exchange with a look of quiet satisfaction. He wasn't here just to make a point. He was here to make sure this kind of thing never happened again. David finally turned to Ethan, his voice cold. Ethan, please go to my office. Now. Ethan nodded quickly, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He scurried away, leaving the counter unmanned. The other employees stood still, avoiding eye contact with Marcus and David. David looked back at Marcus, now much more cautious. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience, Mr. Carter. This is not how we usually conduct business here. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. It's not just about today, David, he said, his voice firm. It's about ensuring this branch treats everyone with the respect they deserve. David nodded vigorously, though his nerves were palpable. Absolutely, Mr. Carter. I'll make sure this issue is addressed immediately. It will not happen again. Marcus raised a hand, signaling for David to pause. I need something more than just words, David, he said, his tone cool but authoritative. David hesitated but quickly nodded. What would you like me to do? I want a full audit of this branch, Marcus said, his voice unwavering. Every employee, every policy, every transaction. I want to see where the problem started. David looked taken aback for a moment, but then nodded in agreement. Understood, Mr. Carter. It will be done. Marcus turned back to the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the employees and customers who were still watching him closely. The air in the bank was thick with anticipation. This isn't just about correcting the mistake, David, Marcus said, his voice rising slightly so everyone could hear. This is about ensuring that every single customer who walks through these doors is treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they are. David swallowed hard, nodding again. I understand, Mr. Carter. I'll make sure we set up new protocols to ensure this never happens again. Marcus glanced at the door, his gaze thoughtful. Good. But there's one more thing, David. David's face tightened. What is it, Mr. Carter? I want a copy of the employee handbook, Marcus said firmly. And while you're at it, pull up the complaint logs for the last 6 months. I want to see the history. David froze for a moment but quickly regained composure. I'll get them to you right away, Mr. Carter. Marcus smiled thinly, clearly satisfied with the progress so far. Thank you, David. Now, one last thing before I leave, he said, turning back toward the employees and customers. He paused, allowing the tension to build once again. Then he spoke, his voice clear and commanding. I'm going to make sure that every branch in this bank operates with transparency, fairness, and respect. If I hear of any other instances like this, I will not hesitate to take action. This is not just about today. This is about setting a new standard. There was a moment of stunned silence as everyone processed his words. Then a few customers started clapping, slowly at first, but the applause grew as more people joined in. Marcus nodded, acknowledging their support, but he wasn't done yet. Now I'm going to leave, he said, turning to David one last time. But you'll be hearing from me soon. Make sure everything gets done. With that, Marcus turned and walked out of the bank, leaving behind a stunned crowd. His footsteps echoed in the lobby as he left, a silent promise hanging in the air. Things were about to change, and no one would forget this day.